U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to announce new measures to combat Omicron spread. That's up tomorrow. Canada is making on-arrival testing mandatory for all foreign travelers by air, except those coming in from the United States. So will the Americans reciprocate on that kind of an exemption with their own restrictions, or will the border tighten up again? Transport Minister Omar Alghabra joins us now. Minister, good to have you on the program. We understand the Americans are set to unveil some of their own travel restrictions tomorrow. A question for you. Do you know whether Canadians will be required to have a test on arrival in the United States, as some newspapers are suggesting?
Hi, David. It's good to be with you. As you know, every country makes its own decisions. We have just implemented layers of protective measures at our own borders based on the advice that we got. We'll wait for the U.S. to announce its own measures.
So you don't have any indication from the Americans yet whether Canadians would indeed be included in this plan to test everybody coming in by air?
I have not been briefed on any. That does not mean that there hasn't been conversations with my colleagues and their counterparts in the U.S. yet.
Okay, so let me talk about people going in the other direction, people going from the United States to Canada. Right now, that's the only area of travel that is exempted from the on-arrival testing requirement by your government, by Canadian officials. Do you expect that to change?
David, we are preparing in case we need to change that. For now, as you stated, they're exempted, but as we've demonstrated so far that we can swiftly and quickly change our measures based on the changing circumstances. And what we are doing, we're not just waiting for that to happen, we are preparing in case we need to do that, but we'll, as we always have been, guided by data and our advice that we receive from our public health experts.
When you say you're preparing, Minister, what does that preparation look like? Is it talking to companies that would administer PCR tests to get them to ramp up capacity?
It means several things. One of them is increasing our ability to increase our capacity for testing. Second, cooperating with provinces. Third, preparing our land borders, because don't forget, we also have these ports of entry at overland. So we are preparing for all that potential eventuality.
You know, I get that there's a lot that we don't know at this point, an awful lot we don't know about the Omicron variant, and we'll know quite a bit more likely in 3 or 4 weeks. But at this point, what do you say to people who are planning business or family travel between now and the end of the year? What advice can you offer to them about what might happen?
Yeah, David, look, let me recognize first how uncertain these times are. And I know some of us were hoping that we maybe have put the worst of the pandemic behind us, and I really hope that we have. But there are still a lot of uncertainty, and I realize that people want answers. So all I could say is that I encourage all Canadians to follow public health advice. Getting vaccinated is key element of our response to this virus. Second, keep an eye out on travel advisories, on changing circumstances, because the reality is right now the pandemic is not over and things could happen at any moment. So I just want Canadians to pay attention to the circumstances and be ready to change their plans accordingly.
Can I ask you about the travel restrictions on the 10 nations in particular, the 10 African nations and travelers coming from those nations? And I want to start with the test requirement. So under the rules that you have announced yesterday, a traveler, Canadian citizen or otherwise, would need to stop in another country. So, you know, I look at an email that we got here in the Ottawa Bureau today from somebody who left Johannesburg, where there are world-class healthcare facilities. They got a PCR test done for their whole family. They ended up in Ethiopia, and under your requirements, they've got to go and do another test, and ended up going to, what was arranged, which was much more haphazard and very, very busy. Why is it that, for instance, the South African test is not good enough?
David, look, let me also acknowledge that these type of measures sometimes add another layer of inconvenience, and I recognize that. And And I know sometimes can be challenging. Let me explain to you why this third country test is essential. And we've done it before, by the way. We've done it with India, we've done it with Pakistan. So we've done it before. And the idea here is to also create, leaving the country 72 hours. This adds a little bit more time after the individual has left the country that was put on that list. So it just creates extra layers of security to ensure that the test results are more up to date and ensure that everyone is safe.
Okay, so let's talk about the countries that are on that list. 10 nations, they're all in Africa. At the time you put the ban on, not all those countries had actually reported detection of the Omicron variant. And I want to play a short clip from South Africa's president, who has been very critical of countries that have put travel bans on people traveling from his country.
I think it is important that I emphasize this in the light of the discovery by South African scientists of the Omicron variant of the coronavirus and the subsequent standing united against the imposition of arbitrary and discriminatory restrictions that are not only unscientific, but counterproductive in the long run.
How do you defend these as not discriminatory and not arbitrary?
David, let me first applaud and congratulate the scientists of South Africa for their hard work and their transparency. The pandemic is not over anywhere unless it's over everywhere, and we need scientists to cooperate all over the world by sharing information and data. So, but here's also what we as a government, federal government, that have a responsibility to protect Canadians' health and safety, is that when we provided with information, we need to act swiftly. And we've done this before. I mentioned India and Pakistan, that we had suspension to the Caribbean for a while. We had a suspension to the UK. We had suspension to Morocco. So those are based on, not politics, based on advice and data that our public health officials collect and their own assessment. So it is, I know it adds inconvenience. And by the way, at the height of the pandemic, we had measures between provinces. So it's a responsibility.
Okay, but let me just ask you, so South Africa has detected the variant. So has Ireland, so has the United Kingdom. What's the difference between them? Why does South Africa get the travel ban and the others don't?
Sure, and we've asked Dr. Theresa Tam. I know many journalists have asked Dr. Theresa Tam. And there are factors that we look at. Vaccination rate of the country, the current epidemiology of that particular country, and community transmission. The ability for control of the community transmission and restrictions that are ongoing. So all those factors are considered, not only the number of cases, but the big epidemiology picture. That's what experts like Dr. Theresa Tam look at, and they make a decision. It's, there's always way for people to second guess or criticize. We need to act swiftly, and this is what we're doing. We're acting quickly to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And as we learn more, we will adjust these measures. But we had to be very proactive to ensure that we did whatever we can to slow the movement of this variant.
Okay, and I understand that you are not likely to have a timeline for when these new measures will be undone. But what is the threshold? What does it take to say, we're no longer going to do testing on arrival? We're no longer going to have these 10 nations on a travel ban list?
We're all anxiously waiting to hear from scientists about their analysis of this variant and their assessment of this variant. So as soon as we learn more information, about the spread of this variant, about the impact of this variant, we will adjust our measures. So stay tuned. We've demonstrated that we'll act swiftly, and I can assure you, as we learn more, we will also adjust our measures.
All right. Minister Alghabra, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, David.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.